All right, in this practice, we're going to go ahead and do complex numbers and review. So it says I squared equals -1. Which of the following is equal to I to the 5th minus I to the 7th? I would recommend just doing it in your calculator. Remember, checking the mode. So when you press mode, it needs to be in the complex number form. If it is, that means that you are free to do complex numbers involving I. So now I'm just going to type it in how I see it. So I, you press second decimal. I to the -5 minus I raised to the 7 gives me an answer of 2I, which is option E. So anything involving I would just recommend doing it in your calculator. All right, next one. Again, we have I to the 4th minus 5 divided by I squared. Pick up my calculator. I'm going to put the numerator in parentheses. So I to the 4th minus 5 divided by I squared is 4, option D. Remember, I would recommend using calculators when you're working with I. It's fast. I know that you can do it by hand, but honestly, I wouldn't waste your time. I would just do it in the calculator. It will do it for you. Next, parenthesis, I minus 1 raised to the 2 divided by parenthesis, I to the plus 1 raised to the 2. Gives me an answer of -1. So again, on these, I would not waste my time. I would just do the calculator. Make sure it's in complex mode and use your calculator. Number 4, line L is the transversal of two parallel lines. What is the value of x? So in this problem, we only care about what x is. So I know that this is 75, which means this y value is also 75. This forms a linear pair, so 3x plus 75 has to equal 180. Subtracting 75, I would get 105. And when I divide that by 3, I get 35. So my x value is 35. Oops, let me move that down. Number 5, in the xy coordinate plane, which of the following points would lie on the graph 2y minus x equals 8? What I would recommend is plugging these points into the equation. So the correct answer is C. So 2 times y, my y value is 4, minus my x value of 0 has to equal 8. Well, 8 minus 0, that does in fact equal 8. So all you're doing here is taking your answer choices and plugging them in, and that will help guide you to solve for the right answer. All you're doing here is taking your points and plugging them in and seeing if you get 8 out. Remember, equations of lines are just functions. You plug numbers in to get a number out. All right, just up here, number 6. Which of the following is the equation of a line parallel through 2 points? Well, the first thing you have to do if it's involving slope is calculate slope. So 8 minus 4 over 3 minus -1, which would be positive. So I get 4 over 4, which is positive 1. Well, looking at my answer choices, the only one with a positive, like a slope of positive 1 is option A. So you actually don't have to solve. If you needed to solve, like if there were 2 that were the same, you would then pick a point, you have your slope, plug it into point slope, and solve for y. But in this case, you don't have to do that. Number 7, each of the following equations represents a line in the xy coordinate axis except blank. So we're looking for which one is not a line. Well, this has a power of 1 to x, so it is a line. A power of 1 to x, that's a line, power of 1. This one, when I distribute, I get x squared plus x. The power of 2 makes it a parabola, which means that it is not a line. So it's option D. Remember, lines only have powers of 1. Number 8, the points M, N, P, and Q are in a line in that order. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and draw those segments. So M, N, P, and Q. N is the midpoint of MP. So N is the midpoint of MP, so these two are equal. If the length of MN is 14, so this is 14, which means this measurement is also 14. NP, the length of NP is 2x. And the length of PQ is 4x minus 19. How long is MQ? Well, in this problem, notice that NP is 14 and it's also 2x. So 2x has to equal 14, so x is 7. So when you're filling in your picture, M to N we know is 14. We know that point P is also 14. We know x is 7. So to find the rest of the length, you're going to do 4 times 7 minus 19. Oh, I wrote that as 19. Sorry, that's a 9. 4 times 7 minus 9, and that gives us a measurement of 19. Sorry, that's where I was getting 19 from. So this length is 19, so I would just add 14 plus 19 for a length of 47. Notice it does not say that P is in the middle of MQ, so you do actually have to solve for that piece. Number 9, if the point 2M and M minus 1 lie on y equals x plus 4, then what does M equal? Well, this is the x value, this is the y value. So y equals x plus 4. My y coordinate is m minus 1. My x coordinate is 2m plus 4. Now we can solve for m. So subtracting this m over, I would get m plus 4. Subtracting 4, I would get negative 5. This is just fancy substitution with coordinates. So I'm just plugging it in based on the coordinate location. It kind of tells you here, x is first, 2m is first. They would go together. Number 10 is another imaginary number problem, so I should be picking up my calculator to aid me in this. I would recommend doing top and top, bottom to bottom. So in this problem, go ahead and zoom that out a little. I would recommend doing I to the 5th times I to the 8th. Oh, not pi. Oops. I raised to the 8th. There we go. So the top is I, and then I would just go ahead and do the bottom. I minus 1 times I plus 1, and I would get negative 2. And then I would just look at my answer choices. So in my answer choices, the one with a negative 2 with I in the top. So I in the top, no fractions. So in this problem, I'm left with these two. It's obviously not B. So the correct answer is A. Again, I would use those answer choices to help you. On the back, number 11. Let me adjust my camera real quick. All right, number 11, it says the distance between P and Q. We've got P and Q. What is the distance? Okay, the distance between P and Q is half of the distance between these points. So what I would recommend is finding the distance between those points and dividing it in half. So the distance formula is the square root x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared. I'm going to make this x2. So negative 8 minus negative 4, which would be positive 4. y2 is 1 minus 2 squared. So I'd be left with negative 4 squared plus negative 1 squared. When I square, I'll always get positive, so this is 16 plus 1, which is the square root of 17. Now, the square root of 17 is the whole thing. We only want half, so I divide this in half, which is option B. All right, number 12. In the coordinates of the point P, x times y is greater than 0. Given the 4 quadrants, which of the following statements must be true? So when I take my x comma y coordinate and I multiply x times y, it has to be greater than 0. Remember how quadrants are created. To get to quadrant 1, that's a positive and a positive. To get to quadrant 2, that's a negative and a positive. To get to quadrant 3, that's a negative and a negative, left and down. And to get over here, that's a positive and a negative. Well, if we're multiplying these together, a positive times a positive will be greater than 0. So positive times a positive is quadrant 1. Also, a negative number times a negative number is also greater than 0. So it could also be in quadrant number 3. So 1 and 3 is the correct answer, because when I multiply those coordinates together, I will always get a positive number out. Number 13, and if the x and y intercepts of a line are non-zero and share the same sign, which of the following would be true? So I'm going to go ahead and sketch. Let's say that my y-intercept is positive. That would mean my x-intercept is positive. So if I draw that, that's a negative slope. Well, if my y-intercept is negative, my x-intercept would have to be negative. That is also a negative slope. So the slope of the line has to be negative. I would test both of them to kind of figure it out, but it's telling you x and y have to have the same slope, so you know that you're graphing them correctly. So the correct answer is A, the slope of the line is negative. Number 14, what is the x-intercept of y equals negative 1/4 x plus 2? Well, if it's an x-intercept, that is where my y value equals 0. So I'm going to take 0 and plug it in for y. So 0 equals negative 1/4 x plus 2. Subtract 2, so negative 2 equals negative 1/4 x. When I go ahead and multiply by 4 to clear the fraction, so this would cancel, and I'm left with negative 8 equals negative 1x. Divide by negative 1, and I would get positive 8. So be careful here. That is a minus, like a negative 1/4. If you didn't choose that, you might have chosen option A. So just be mindful that there is a negative there. The angle between two perpendicular lines has a measure of 2x plus 2. What is x? Well, perpendicular lines make 90 degrees, so this equals 90. So 2x plus 2 equals 90. 2x equals 88 when I divide by 2. X is 44. So that's just definition of perpendicular lines, and knowing that perpendicular lines make 90 degrees. Number 16, go ahead and adjust. For the line in an xy coordinate plane, which of the following is true about a y-intercept? If it is a y-intercept, x is 0, and the number is here. So x has to equal 0 if it's a y-intercept. Well, looking at our answer choices, the only one that matches this is option B. The coordinates are in the form of 0, a number, for some number C, which we literally wrote right here. If it's a y-intercept, x is 0. So that's just definitions. Number 17, in the xy coordinate plane, if the point x, negative 5 lies in the graph, what is the value of x? This is just substitution. This is the x coordinate, this is the y coordinate. So I'm going to take the y coordinate and plug it in. So 5 times negative 5 minus 2x equals negative 30. So negative 25 minus 2x equals negative 30. Adding, I would get negative 2x equals negative 5. Divide by negative 2. I would get x to equal 5/2, which is option D. So whenever you're working with these problems, it's just substitution. That's all you're doing is substituting your information into your problem. Number 19, for which of the following equations is represented by this same line? So what I would do is solve for the y value. So to solve for y, I'm going to go ahead and subtract x. So y over 4 equals negative x minus 1/2. Then I'm going to clear the fraction by multiplying both sides by 4. So when I do that, I get y equals negative 4x. And then negative 4 times negative 1/2 is negative 2, which is option A. So it's just clearing your fractions, moving the x value, and then clearing your fraction. Number 19, the x-intercept of a line is negative 6 if the slope is 5. What is the equation in slope-intercept form? So in this formula, if it is the x-intercept, that means that x equals negative 6. Slope is 5. We want to know the value in the xy plane. So in this problem, I'm going to use y equals m times x plus b. So y equals mx plus b. We know that our m value is 5. Our x value is negative 6. We can't write it in slope-intercept form until we know a slope-intercept. Now, remember, or the y-intercept, remember, if it's an x-intercept, y is actually equal to 0. So I can put a 0 here. So I get negative 30 plus b So my B value is 30. So looking at my answer choices, I'm looking for a B value of 30. The only one with a B value of 30 is option A. And we already know that the slope is 5. So y equals 5x plus 30. So on that one, just be mindful that if it's an x-intercept, y is 0. So that's how we know we can plug 0 in here. All right, in the figure below, we have line segments, and we know that PQM is congruent to NQR. So we know that these two are equal. And the measure of PQM is half the measure of NQN. So that means that this angle here, we don't know what it is, but we know that this measure is half of that. Well, if these two are equal, this is also half of x. We know that they're the same. We know that this is unknown, but we know that this is half of it. Okay? We want to know the measure of NQR. So we're trying to find the value basically of x. So 1/2 x plus 1/2 x has to add up to 180 degrees. 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1, so 1 plus 1 is 2. So we have 2x equals 180. When I divide by 2, I get 90. So the answer is C. And the last one, number 21. We are looking for which values, where they intersect. Well, these both equal y, so this is just a system. So I'm just going to set 5x minus 1 equal to negative 3x minus 17. I get 8x, add the 1, equals negative 16. So x equals negative 2. Going through my options, option C is the only one where it has an x value of negative 2. So on a problem like this, where they intersect, it's just a system. They both equal y, so they can both equal each other.